you brought heaven down. And the question was centered around the accuracy of this lyric, whether God would be unhappy without us. And as a consequence, if he was going to be unhappy, he was forced to bring heaven down so that he could be happy by having us in his presence. Well, you can see the flaw in that logic, because God is always happy. He doesn't need anything. He is totally happy within himself. He's completely fulfilled, and he doesn't need us, but he chooses to love us, and he chooses to enjoy us. I never read those lyrics critically, and I disagreed with the question the person asked, but it made me think about it. It made me think about God's love towards us, and how his desire is for us. He actually desires us. He yearns for us. That is his love for us, and it's the overflow of who he is. He was willing to send his son, one and only son, to come to earth and to die on a cross after excruciating torture to win us, to win our hearts, and to pay the price and penalty of our sin. Now, I guess a case could be made for these lyrics, if you were to read them liberally, to think that maybe God was lonely, but I don't think so. I think God is totally happy, because that's what the scriptures say. And the reason he loves us is because he chooses to love us. To quote Pastor Piper, God's delight in us is the overflow of his fullness, not the compensation of his emptiness. God is not empty. He's not trying to make up for anything missing in himself. When he loves you and I, it's the overflow of who he is. It's all of him. That is, if you can get your head wrapped around just even a piece of that, it's overwhelming. In fact, the song we just sang, "Show Us Your Glory," that just kind of encapsulates that picture of this overflow, this God who's bigger than the universe, and he's entering into our universe, entering into our time and space, and saying, "I love you. I made you for me. And I made you so that you could find your purpose in me." And when you think about what that all means and what that all adds up to, is it's a wonderful description of what grace is like. It's someone who is in need of nothing and who chooses you and says, "I want you because you are the desire of my heart. I choose to love you." That's a picture of grace like there is no other. Now, if you've been a Christian for any length of time, you probably understand grace. You probably could define grace for me, but I'm going to give you a couple definitions of grace and a couple quick references to it just to make sure we're all on the same page in case you've never heard of these before. Understand that grace is God's riches at Christ's expense. G-R-A-C-E. God's riches at Christ's expense. See, grace is something that's free to the recipient, but it still costs the giver a lot. In fact, you think about what it cost God to rescue us from sin and slavery, it cost him his most precious possession, his son. So it cost God enormously, but it costs us nothing because his gift is free. God's riches, that's everything God has, is ours now, but it was at Christ's expense. Now we understand why we need grace, right? You understand you need grace because we cannot earn God's favor because our sin is too great. We cannot earn the love of someone who is independent of us. There's no way we can earn it, no way we can gain it. It's given freely to us. But our sin has separated from us, from him. And understand then, the third thing is that grace flows from the cross. There's no better place to go when you're in need of grace than the foot of the cross. And you want to say, "God, I need you," that's the best place to go. Because it reminds you of the cost God paid, the price he paid to set you free, to show his love and to demonstrate that for you. You understand that grace is what God does for us. Grace is the expression of his love for us. And grace even shows us the character of God and the costliness of our rebellion. Now that we're kind of on the same page, understand that our scriptures are divided into two testaments, Old Testament and New Testament. Everybody understand that? And most people, when they look at the Bible, they look at the Old Testament, they see this really thick part of the Bible, and it's about the law. You know what I'm talking about? The law, the rules. Talk about, and we understand looking back that it was to describe our brokenness before God, our need. And God was telling us that this is to show you how holy He is and how unholy we are. And so the Old Testament really shows that. But most of us, we look at the Old Testament, we think of law. And we think that the way that people in the Old Testament got right with God is they obeyed the law, or tried to obey the law. But in the New Testament, it's all about grace. And we tend to think that grace didn't exist in the Old Testament. That was all about law. But that the law doesn't matter anymore, and the New Testament's all about grace. Is that kind of what you've heard or wondered or maybe thought? Because if it is, it's wrong. I want to jump into the Old Testament and just go to the first place where we find the word grace or favor. And find out that it was, understand that even in the creation story, God doesn't mention grace, but there is grace there. When God clothed Adam and Eve in animal skins, that was grace. Because they deserved death. And yet He covered them. The word there is atoned. He atoned, which means covered them with animal skins. And it can be quite a revelation for you if you've ever understood this, but that was the first sacrifice for sin. Because an animal had to die so that they could be clothed. Yeah. And they had to be clothed. That was the first sacrifice. And God's the one who did it. That's the amazing part. They didn't do it. God did it for them. Which is, again, a picture of grace. God does for you what you can't do for yourself. And it was God's grace that didn't just end the human race then. It was God's grace that even locked them out of the garden so that they couldn't eat of the tree of life. Thank you. Lost that almost. So they couldn't eat the tree of life in their fallen state, because that would have been disastrous. To live forever separated from God. That's the description of hell. That would not have been good. And it was God's grace that allowed them to even face the consequences of their sin. But we're going to look at, well, thank you, that helps a lot. I appreciate that. So we're going to look in Genesis chapter 6, and that's already on the screen, I see. Let me read it to you in case you haven't already read it. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that He had made man on the earth, and it grieved Him to His heart. And so the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds in the heavens, for I am sorry I have made them. In this passage, we find out that the sinfulness of man has grown more and more degenerate. In fact, God is grieving that He made mankind. And God purposes to destroy all life on earth. But there's a curious verse that follows this. And that's actually verse 8. And it says, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then it says, Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God. Now, separate those two verses. Don't look at verse 9 yet. Look just verse 8, because that's the first one. It says Noah found favor or received grace from God. What we do is when we skim through a paragraph like that, we think the reason Noah found favor is because he walked with God and he was righteous. But that's not true. Noah was just as bad as everybody else on the earth. He needed God's grace as much as you and I do. He was a sinner as well. But God's grace, God favored him. God picked him out of all the people on the earth and said, I want you. And you're going to be my vessel for rescuing all life on the earth. I'm going to use you, this youngest guy. You just chose him. Isn't that kind of cool? God chose Noah. He said, I want to use you. Now, you read later in the book of Genesis, you find out Noah was not all that perfect of a guy anyway. He had his flaws. But at the same time, Noah gets favor from the Lord. I looked up the Hebrew word for favor. It means to acquire, to find, to get possession of the favor or grace of God. He received that from God. And he embraced it, because you see what happens in the next verse. See, the consequence, it's cause and effect. He had found favor, and what did he do with that favor then? He became righteous, and he was blameless in his time, and he began to walk with God. Those are consequences of having favor with God. Not just having favor, but embracing it and making it your own and saying, I'll take it. When God says, no, I want to use you. Noah says, okay, I'll take it. And I'll walk with you because you picked me out and I don't deserve it, but I'm going to walk with you because you just love me. Not because of anything I did, just because you chose to love me. Now, isn't that amazing? Noah could have been swept aside like everybody else, but God's favor set him aside. Noah responded to God's favor with life change. And that's what you and I do too, because that's the natural response to favor. When someone shows you love, you have one of two choices. You can either accept it or you can reject it, right? What happens when you receive somebody's love? It changes you. Love changes you. Anybody that's been married knows how it changes you. Love changes you. It changes something about you. It changes something about your character. Love changes you. Grace is that undeserved and unmerited favor, which means receiving favorability from God that you can do nothing to earn. It's a gift. For Noah, it was a gift, and for you and I, it was a gift as well. Think about these things. If you got a promotion at work and you were the least likely, least qualified person to get it, that would be grace. You understand that? And everybody else would be trying to, kill you because they'd be upset that you got it and they didn't, right? Because you're the least qualified person, and somehow you get that promotion. You get that better job. You get that raise. Not because of anything you deserved, but because your boss had favor for you. You think about why God selected Israel. God even tells Israel, the nation of Israel, he says, I picked you even though you were the slum of the earth. You were the dust of the earth. You were like nothing. You were like a naked prostitute in the desert. That's basically the words God uses. He said, I chose you when you were nothing. And I made you into a great nation that will bring glory to my name. That's what God has done to each one of us. Because before you knew Christ, if you're honest, if you're really honest with yourself, you were not much of anything. I was telling somebody today that I was talking to someone today about the fact that before I was a Christian, I thought I was really somebody. I mean, I thought I could just conquer the world on my own, that I could do anything on my own. I had it together. I could do anything. And when I met Christ, I began to realize that I was dependent. I was nothing. I was deceived to think that I was something. I recognized just how alone I was, how empty and lost I was. Can you imagine getting a large inheritance from a relative that either you had never known or maybe that you had hurt or broken off a relationship with, and yet they gave you their entire estate. That's grace. Now, a lot of people equate grace to not getting a ticket when you're driving 70 in a 35. But you know what? That's not grace. That's mercy. Because mercy, it's not costing anybody anything. Grace is what happens if you got that ticket and you went to the courtroom and the judge said, guess what? I find you guilty, but I'm going to pay your fine for you. That's grace. Because that's what Jesus did for us. Grace, it takes the cost on someone else and gives you the gift. So when you get off that ticket, that's just mercy. That's nice, but that's not grace. Chuck Swindoll says, it's grace that moves God to offer us the free gift of salvation and forgiveness. Grace is what compelled the Apostle Paul to write of a mystery never understood before. That's out of 1 Corinthians, which we'll cover in a couple weeks. Grace is also what allows us to relax into another's accepting embrace as he gives us the freedom to discover our unique journey laid out by God. Grace is what allows you to rest and to just stop worrying, stop getting all worked up over things, because you recognize how God is in charge. He really is in charge of everything. There's nothing so freeing as a realization that your performance will not change somebody else's mind about you. There's nothing more freeing. Jennifer is leading a class on search for significance, and that's one of the things they learn is performance is unrelated to God's love. It's not about your performance. Grace permits you to stand before God without any fear. You are right with God because of what Jesus did, not anything you did. You and I have nothing to boast about before God. We can't say, God, you know what? I did this for you, and remember when I did this for you, and remember when I did this for you. He said, that's just garbage. That's nothing. That's nothing. You're doing it to get points. You're doing it for the wrong reason. When I do things around the house, put dishes in the dishwasher for my wife, I don't do them to gain her favor. And I don't just do them because they have to be done. I do them because I love her, and I don't want her to have to bear the burden of having to do them. And so I take that burden on myself and do them. Why? Because I love her. Not because I'm trying to earn her love. It's a response to the relationship. When you do things for people you care about, you're not trying to win something or earn something from them, hopefully. If that's the case, you need some counseling. But if you're doing things for someone, you're generally doing it because you want to, because the love compels you. Mother Teresa was really well known for asking why she would wash people's feet and care for dying people on the streets of India, Calcutta. And she would say, they said, well, this is amazing. I mean, why would you do this? She says, I wouldn't do this for all the money in the world. But I do it out of response to the love of God, what he did for me. I could do nothing else but this. But she was compelled by love. Now here's the hardest part about wrapping our heads around grace and wrapping our arms around the grace God offers us. I'm going to share that with you. Few of us have ever really come to the place of self-knowledge where we have been confronted with just how much evil is inside of ourselves and selfishness is inside of us. Few of us have ever gone to that dark place where we've just realized just how utterly wicked we are. Maybe at the moment when we accepted Christ, we got a glimpse of it and we said, wow, I need rescue. But very few of us go to that dark place or go to those closets where that stuff is hidden, where the garbage is piled in and stuffed away so you don't have to look at it, you don't have to be reminded of what you're capable of. But you know, every one of us is capable of horrible things. We only have to go back, 70-some years in Nazi Germany to see the terrible things that people did. In fact, in the concentration camps, actual prisoners, Jewish prisoners, it was, I can't remember the fellow's name, he wrote that he was amazed at how wicked people could be and how utterly selfish people could become. And people were trying to just survive. They would steal, they would kill, they would do anything just to survive. He says the desperateness of humanity was revealed in the concentration camps. Because when there's nothing left between you and survival, you find out what you're really made of. But there were exceptions in those concentration camps. There's exceptions of Christians who gave their lives up for others. But here's the real point. Until we can come face to face with the utter sinfulness of our sin, we will never grasp the gracefulness of grace. Until you come face to face with just how bad you are and how bad you need God's grace, until you get to that place where you're confronted with it, you'll really never know just how amazing grace is. Anybody seen the movie Amazing Grace with the story of, I think we even showed it here once. It was an amazing story of the fellow that wrote Amazing Grace. His name is, no? I'll remember it. See, this is what happens when I go ad lib and I don't do any of my notes. But the guy that wrote it had been a slaver. In fact, here's the amazing part. A lot of people think that he was a slaver and then he became a Christian. But he was actually running a slave ship while he was a Christian. And he came to the realization what he was doing, and people were dying on the ships of disease. His crews were abusing the prisoners in horrible ways. And when one day he came to the realization that this was wrong, and that God still loved him, and it broke him. When you think about those words you sing, Amazing Grace, when you think about those words, think about that. Here's a man who came to the other depths of despair, of darkness, and realizing just how wicked he had been. Wow, he was a Christian. He thought he was halfway decent because he had accepted Christ and he was right with God, and he was still in the depths of evil. And God still loved him and forgave him. There's a scene in the movie where the fellow who wrote this is mopping floors. And he's weeping as he's telling the story to the fellow that's going to eventually be responsible for outlawing slavery, the slave trade in England. And all he wants to do is mop floors for God now. He doesn't want to do anything else. He just wants to, he's just so broken. He wants to serve in the most simple way because he sees himself as what he had become, but what God had done for him. That's what I call just a heart that has come to the place of recognizing its real sinfulness, its brokenness, and seeing God in all his gracefulness and walking. Just all you can do is say, wow. Nothing else I can do but say, wow, your grace is amazing. In most of our society, we see sin as something that needs therapy instead of repentance. We see churches offer anger management classes, not anger repentance classes, or groups to help you overcome addictions rather than overcoming your sin. Sin has become a disease that we treat therapeutically, not a behavior for which we're responsible for. We have to understand that sin is something that we need to repent of. Sin is brokenness. It's darkness in us, and we all carry it. Even those of us who walk with God, we have those closets that are packed with darkness. And it's time that we recognize that. Stop fooling yourself and everybody else around you. We carry darkness. But God promises us life and light and forgiveness and grace that will sweep that closet clean. You can come free of that shame. You can empty that closet without any shame or fear of rejection. He will embrace you just the way you are. In fact, he is embracing you just the way you are. He says, just clean that closet out and throw it out in the trash. Get rid of it. It's not doing you any good, and all it's doing is it's an anchor holding you back. Repent of it. Give it up, because my grace is so much better. Amen. Isn't it? Isn't his grace so much better than that junk? Why do we burn it? Why do we carry it? I read Romans chapter 7, and I'm kind of in shock because Paul is describing this same picture. Here's what he says in Romans 7. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. I do what I hate to do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree the law is good. And as it is, I no longer myself who does it, but it's sin living in me. I know that nothing good lives in me. You think this guy understands the depths that he's made of? Absolutely. That is in my sinful nature, for I have the desire to do what's good, but I cannot carry it out. For what I do is not the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it's no longer I who do it, but is living inside the sin living inside of me that does it. So I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inmost being, I delight in God's law. Don't you? Don't you delight in Jesus Christ? Don't you love him? Absolutely. But I see another law at work in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within my members. What a wretched man I am. I love this part here, though, because this is where we get our hands wrapped around grace. He says, who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I myself am a slave to God's law, but in the sinful nature, a slave to the law of sin. I and you can be set free. In fact, we already are set free. It's already a done deal. It was done at the cross. The grace is already provided for us to sweep empty those closets. We don't have to remain the way we are. The law points to God, it points to holiness, it points to perfection. Perfection that you and I can never attain on our own. Because it points to the holiness and perfection of God. And that moral and spiritual perfection it eludes even the most dedicated person. The Apostle Paul thought he was one of those people. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He described himself as one who kept the law in every little detail. He was proud of it. He was like, look at me. I'm good with God because I'm doing all this stuff. And he comes and he writes this Romans chapter 7, which describes his darkness and says, I'm worthless without Christ. I need his grace. I'm nothing without it. This week I found a journal in my office dating back to 1981, and it was about a year and a half after I was saved. May of 1980 is when I was saved. So I started going through this journal, and I was kind of like, I wonder what I was thinking back then. And that was a long time ago. Yeah, 36 years. A long time ago. And so I found entry after entry lamenting the power of sin in my life as a young Christian, and my powerlessness to free myself from the habits and addictions that pursued me and controlled me. I was beating myself up in this journal. And over, though, I would find another entry describing the relief I felt as I stopped laboring and started resting in the grace of God. You can see this back and forth. Oh, I can't believe I did it. And then, I don't know how long after that, it was the part of the same entry or whatever. It's like, oh, thank you, God, that I stand forgiven in Christ. I am free. There is nothing that controls me. I repent. I am set free. I am free by the blood of Jesus Christ. And His grace is sufficient for me. And I, over and over throughout this journal, in that first year and a half, I could see this pattern. And I was struggling between performance and grace. Performance and grace. Shame and grace. Shame and grace. I don't know if you struggle with any of those. If you're human, I imagine you do. If you're walking with God and the devil's whispering in your ear, you're probably struggling with some of those. The temptation is that kind of temptation that says, I just give up, it's not worth it. I mean, the cross paid for your sins, so just don't worry about it. Just go ahead and sin. And just don't worry about it. Just confess it when you do it, just get on with it. And that's defeatism. Because that says that I can still do that. Paul just tells us not to do that. He says, sin more so that grace may more abound, and that's not the case. We don't want sin to rule us. Because it really beats you up. And it will destroy you. It'll make you very ineffective if you allow sin to control your life. But you can embrace the grace that God is providing and allow Him to set you free. God offers every one of us something we cannot attain on our own, and that's being made right with Himself through Jesus Christ. He's taken every one of those sins and He's taken them to the cross. And if you got them in your closet, in your heart, He says, take them out and throw them at the cross. Leave them behind. Lay them down. He says, well, what if I pick them up next week? Lay them down again. Every time you pick it up, put it back down. Eventually, that closet will be empty. We're kind of like sin hoarders. We try to keep stuff back in that closet, hoarding. But God is really good at destroying hoarding. He empties that closet for us. So eventually that closet's going to get emptied out. So here's your final point. Repentance is the result of grace that is truly embraced. John Newton was the guy who wrote Amazing Grace. He understood what it was to receive grace because it changed his life. He fought against the slave trade. He did whatever he had to do to stop it. Eventually it was stopped. He recognized that he had a role to play in that. His repentance ended up being changing the world. What would your repentance change? How would it affect your family, your work, or your church, or yourself, or your marriage, if you were to repent of stuff in that closet? And receive by receiving. See, here's where you have to be very careful. Repentance comes as a consequence of grace that's been received. Truly received. You look at that closet of your heart and you see that darkness, and it drives you to the cross, which will lead you to repentance. What we try to do is we try to repent and say, oh God, I'll get better. I promise. Will you still love me? I promise I'll get better. And that's not what He's telling you to do. He's saying, come close to the cross and allow His grace to work in you so that you'll want to empty that closet and never want to go back to it. So here's a question for you today. If you're tormented by a troubling sin, or you've not drawn near to God for one reason or another, God isn't waiting for you to clean your life up. He's seeking to have you come closer and to receive His gift of love. He just says, climb up on my lap, even though you've got dirt all over you. I don't know if any of you have grandchildren. I'm not fortunate enough to have them yet, but I understand that little babies and little 2-year-olds can get pretty muddy. I mean, you got one staying in your house right now. And they can get pretty dirty. And the temptation is, let's give them a bath before I'll cuddle them. But you know what? When they're ready to cuddle, we're just going to cuddle. I'll wash it off later. That's what God does with us. He just invites us to come up. Just the way we are. He wants you to come. Come. Receive His love. Receive that love. Worry about washing it off later, because you'll want to wash it off afterwards. And so God has chosen to love every one of you here today, because there's nothing lovable about each of us, is there? He's chosen to love you, but there's nothing lovable about us, except that He made us and He chose to love you. So just like that dirty baby, let's crawl on His lap and enjoy Him, right? And if you're a Christian, I want you to know this. Your deeds do not determine your destiny. God's grace determines your destiny. Don't allow your mistakes to control where you're going to go or how you're going to do things. Allow God's grace to determine for you. We really need grace, because grace drives our adoration of God, and it gives us the ability to walk in joy, to celebrate His love, and to get rid of that religious performance that we attend to. I read that meth addicts who have just turned to Christ, they've been known to they've actually had meth addicts completely come free of their addiction when they came to Christ. Now, how does God do something like that? The same way that He takes sin and He sets you free of that. Because God is powerful. His love is so cleansing. His grace is that amazing. So let's just go to the Lord in prayer.